Alright guys, so now we want to cut our collar, and then bear in mind this collar has two types. I mean, they have two types. They have the collar base and the collar fall. Now the collar base is the base, the one that holds the neck area. The collar fall is the one that you fold, right? So now the neck I have is a neck of 17. So in cutting the collar base, you add extra 2 to it. That 2 is going to serve you for the button allowance. So now I have my collar gum here. This collar gum is what I use in making my collar. Make sure you make use of collar gum for maximum results. Then you mark your baseline here. Then when you mark your baseline, now that baseline will serve you for the baseline of your collar. Then the collar width is solely your choice, but then you can use 1.1 inch depending on as the case may be. They have different collar sizes. Now any size you choose to use is solely your choice. So now at the back, I'm using 1.2 for the back, 1.2 inches for the back. Then still take the 1.2 all through to the neck area. So right here you have the 1.2 all through. So you mark the chalk, the pen. I use pen because this is a collar gum, right? Then the neck we have was 17 neck plus 2 is 18. The 18 by 2 is 9. So you mark at 9 inches. So 19, right? So 19. So you mark 9.5. That's 19 neck, right? Then mark 19. That's 17 neck plus 2, 19. Sorry about that. Then you connect accordingly, right? Then you can now decide to make a little curve at the base. It's solely your choice. But if you still want to keep it straight, fine. Alright guys, so now for the collar fall, now you mark exact of your neck 17. That's the neck you have 17. Now the base might be 1.5 or 2 as the case may be. So whatever you choose to use, you can mark, go about. So now I'm using 1.7 at the back of the collar fall, and then at the upside I might paint 2.5 or 2.3 depending on how wide you want it to be. And then you make a little curve with the help of your lap curve. You curve it in this form. Now bear in mind, it might not be straight, it must be in a curvy form in this direction, right? So once you curve it this way, this helps you for your collar fall, and then you flip it off straight up this way. Now there are different types of collar, right? So this might be called the straight line collar. That's very simple and nice. And then after you must have done this, you now start from the 1 inch or about half inch inside, and then curve the collar base in this form, just to have it to be artistic or to be lovely at that edge. So you curve it and then you slant it out a bit. Just the slanting might be 3 inches inwards by 1/4 inch that way. So you have it to be in this form. Now the reason to have it slanted is to make it lap properly, so that by the time you put it on your shirt, it will relax on the collar and then be nice without having any rumples or any foldings. So that's for that. Then we're now going to cut it out. Then after cutting, I will now show you how to gum it and how to as well fix it on your shirt, and then as well with the corresponding processes and procedures we might need to undergo while making the collar. So this video is serving you for the collar cutting, and then as well how to gum it as well. So you are going to cut the part that you have curved. That's the area we are so much interested on or in, right? So you are going to cut it in that form. So you cut in that form, right? Then cut it to come out in a curvy form from there. You notch the back base, also notch the upside, so you know the part is for up and the down. You notch that as well. Then this is how it comes out, right? So now I will now bring the material and cut and show you as well how to go about it. Okay guys, so now we are trying to cut the curve, right? I also make use of the collar gum and cutting the curve. So the round sleeve I have for my curve is 8. So you add extra ½ inch or 0.3. That's 9 inches or 9.3 or 9.5. Then that's for the length. then you cut for the length, right? Then when you cut for the length, the next is to cut the width. Now don't forget that what you remove from the clothes was 3 inches for the cuff, so you still cut at 3. Now in using the collar gum to cut the cuff, you are cutting exact of the measurements, right? Now the only thing we added was extra 1.5 for the button allowance and the locking effect for the cuff, right? So then you also make sure you cut it in this form, and then after this cutting, the next thing we do now is the gumming part, which will also be shown for us to know how to gum and sew the cuff and the collar as well. So it will be only cut in 2 pieces, meaning 2 pieces of it. Now you only gum 1 layer of the cuff, right? Then after you must have cut out the cuff, you can now decide to slant it or slash it up. Now this slashing is solely your choice, but then you might just use 1 inch on both ends, 1 inch down, 1 inch away, and then you cut it out this way so that you have it in this form. And then because you are going to sew at the exact end of this, so right. So now this is how the cuff gum should be, and then the next is the collar as well, and then we are going to now show you how to gum these and as well how to sew them. So guys, now you bring the fabric of the material you're making, and then you place the gummy part downward this way. Now you're going to gum at exact measurement by the width, and then you gum accordingly. Then now we have finished gumming the collar. Look at how it is, right? Then you trim off the excess material at the base. Now bear in mind that we are gumming exact at the base, but then in width it will be a bit wider, or wider, and then the length will be as well a bit bigger in length, because we are going to sew at this edge all through, right? So this is where we notched. This is where that will connect to the collar base. This is the collar 4. So this part will be cut exact with the material. Then the edge here will be ½ inch or thereabout bigger. The same thing applied to the upside will be bigger, so because we are going to sew here, so we need a space that we sew from. So now we have gummed the collar base. So now we are trying to cut it out. So you have to cut as well, giving gap or inch for your sewing allowances. Now you will give gap on this one, both on the sides and on the top area as well. Now don't forget that this is how you're gonna do it, and then like I told you, this will be one of the simplest and self-explanatory videos you will see on the long run. When you watch this over and over again, you will go about it. Then you will now fold the base here. Now this area you're going to fold is the area that is stretched, the area that you do not notch, right? Now the notch point is here. Now you're going to fold here ½ an inch this way. Now bear in mind that this gum, you don't cut the gum to the exact of this. You have it to, you need the gum to be a bit away from this, so that by the time you fold, it will be easy for you to fold and sew, right? So you fold accordingly. Guys, now we have finished folding the first one. As you can see, this is how it was folded, right? Then we are trying to replicate and cut the next one. Now the next one we are going to cut now, for the it's 2 pieces for each panel, right? So you cut exact width, cut on top as well, and then you make the beneath one to be longer, because by the time you sew, you have room to trim. Now that part you use to attach the collar is going to be ½ inch or thereabout. So this is how it's being cut. I hope this will help you to solve all issues on shirts, garments, construction, or making, as the case may be. Now for the second panel, or the second part of the collar, which is the collar fall, you also cut exact of this. That's from the one that was ½ inch wider, right? So you also cut exact of this. Now I'll also show you in the sewing procedures or sewing processes how to go about it. And then this is just the collar aspect, and then we are going to cut the cuff as well. Now don't forget that the cuff was cut at exact measurements of 3 inches by 9.5. So we are going to cut this collar, this cuff material to be a bit wider than the up one. So now at this point we are trying to gum the cuff, and then don't forget that this was cut in this form. and then we are folding. We are going to fold this edge, so you give room for this fold. It's very important as well. So you place it in this form, ½ inch or thereabout, or 1 inch bigger than the real color, color gum. Then you gum. Now you are putting the next one as well, and then don't forget that the shiny parts of the gum is where you are going to place on the fabric, right? So you place it in this form, and then make sure that you give gap for both ends sewing, right? So this is how you should. So now after you have gummed it, this is how it was gummed, right? Then bear in mind, look at the edges, how it came out. This is how it must come out. Then after you must have brought them out this way, then you are going to fold this way. After folding, then the next thing will now be sewing. So I will fold both of them and show you how the folding came out. Bear in mind that after folding this, you also use this as well to record for the underneath one, so that you can have pair on each sleeve. So now, as you can see, we have finished cutting the collar and the corresponding components. So you have to bring the collar base, the collar fall, and then you are going to sew at the end or the edge of the collar gum. So you sew from here this way, you stitch, right? Then you sew all through. So you're going to sew from the edge of the collar gum. Then make sure you retain the same shape you have cut it out, and then don't try sewing on top of the collar gum, because it will be so strong for you to bring it out. You might give a little gap that is very, very small, so that you can easily turn it over without much stress. Then you are sewing from there all through to the top, and then don't forget that the place you notch is the one down, right? So sew this edge all through. Then you sew to the end of it all, and then you end your sewing at the tip there, and then you come down again as shown. So that's for the collar fall preparation, right? Then you cut your threads, and then you can now trim off the excesses of the allowances you have kept. Trim it off now, so that it will be easy for you to tuck it out. Now when you trim it out this way, you can leave ½ inch inside, and then go all through from that edge. You go all through, and then cut it out again as well. So now when you have gotten to this stage, after you have sewn, now it's not time for you to tuck it out. So you hold one edge that way. Now you push it inwards, right? Push it inwards, it comes out in this form. You take your scissors or screwdriver, make sure that the edge is properly tucked out. While doing this, don't use pressure, so you won't get to tear or pull off the edge that way. So take your time to do this as well, right? Then make the same thing, the same effect on both edge, so that the edge will come out as sharp as possible. And then having done this, now the next thing you do now is to prepare the collar base, and then you attach it to the collar fall. So now for the collar base, all you need to do first is the one that you folded, right? That one piece that you folded, then you are going to sew what we call a decorative stitch, ½ inch or thereabout all through from the tip. That way you're going to make a ½ inch sewing from that edge all through to the end of the collar base. Then once you are done doing this, the next thing you will do now is to notch the center point, and then correspond it to the other one, and then you proceed to the real coupling aspect of the collar. So once you have done this now, don't forget that this was cut in 2 pieces, but then one was much longer than this other one. So you just have to bring it out this way, and then sew ½ inch, and then fold into 2 equal parts, and then you notch the center point. That notching is to guide you on the points you need to correspond to the other one on top. So having done this now, before you start coupling, please make sure you iron out the collar fall, so that it will be relaxed enough before you start coupling. So right here I have ironed out the collar fall. This is how it is, right? Now this is the measurement, this is how it looks like. So you have to as well do yours in this form for you to be able to do. As you can see, the curvy nature of it at the upside. Now this curvy nature helps this collar to sit properly on the neck when bent backwards. If yours is straight, you might have issues that this will be obstructing the shoulder area, so you just have to give it a curvy effect at this edge, and then here can be straight as you can see. Then let's now start joining the two together. Then don't also forget that you also top stitch all through the collar fall. Top stitch now, because after you have sewn it you may not be able to top stitch again, so 1/2 inch all through that way. And while top stitching, make sure that any material you use underneath should not come out at the other side of the collar. Every part should be equal in width and in length. Then you top stitch all through. Now you must do this top stitching. It's not you can't do without it, so it's inevitable. You have to top stitch all through. That's how you are going to do it. Then so you top stitch from there. This is how you top stitch. Take a very close look at it. Look at how it's been sewn. So don't make yours to go otherwise. Make sure you return or you come up with something similar to this, right, for you to have a maximum result and then perfect finishing. Always use a hand to guide the material beneath so that it will not come outside or across to the other side of the collar. And you can now lock up this sleeve, this collar, so that it will be a one-piece material, right? Just so tip to tip of the base, so that you have a one piece of collar. Because if you don't sew it now, while putting the collar base, one panel might skip and then you start losing. So you just have to do it in this form so that it will be a one-piece result, right? Then after this, now you cut off the excesses or whatever, the edge, and then you make sure you don't reduce the collar width. So you cut it out, trim it out so that it will be neat. Then you fold it into 2 equal parts, and then you notch the center point. Now this notching is as well very important, because it's a center point that we use to join the collar to the collar base. Then the gum part must face the gum part, meaning the part that has the gum on the collar fall must be on top, while the part that has the collar part or the collar base must be on top as well. Now the right faces facing each other, then you now bring the ungummed one to put beneath, right? So now the collar fall is in between the collar base, one gummed and one ungummed. Now the one gummed is corresponding to the one gummed on top for the collar base and the collar fall. Don't interchange the both ends. Make sure you notch the center point, and then all joinings must come from that angle, and then you have it shown in this way. Now you are not going to sew from the little gap or inch left from the gum part, meaning you are going to sew at the ending of the gummed part of the collar base rather. So this is how you're gonna sew. Now please make sure you listen to this video very well, and then you're sewing from that direction. You can see the sewing part. This is the part we are sewing, right? Don't sew on top of the gum. If you mistakenly sew on the gum, you won't have it funny to turn. Then coming to the end of it, now you give it a curvy sewing. The same way you curve your hand while cutting the collar is the same part you are going to curve your hand and sew as well, meaning that you're ending the collar at exact the end of your collar measurements. Don't forget that the neck we had was 17. Add extra 2 to it, making it to be 19. That was the guideline of how we cut the collar base. Then cut your threads as shown. After cutting your threads as shown, then you still continue to end or close the last segment of the collar from the center notching. You hold it evenly this way, and then you sew as well. Take a close look at this. This is how it looks like, right? So you sew in this form. Then when you have gotten to this stage now, your problems on collar cutting and sewing must have been over by now. The only thing left is for you to practice it often, and then watch the video as many times as you can for you to master it, and so that you can do this without the help of the video in your subsequent sewings and trials. Then once you are done with this, you now cut off the excesses, cut your threads as well, and then you trim off the excess of the collar, the one inside, you trim it out. The trimming will help you to have a lighter folding inside. Then once you're able to trim it out in this form, you are going to tuck it out, and then you iron as well before you start folding to the chest, to the shirts. Don't forget that you trim half an inch on the one beneath, right? So you tuck it out in this form. This is how it will come out, in this form. And then once it's been tucked out in that form, the next you will do now is you iron. After ironing, you now trim off the base here, leaving 1/4 inch or half an inch or thereabout. You will use to attach this to the outfits or to your shirts. Now this method of collar cutting and fixing is applicable both on men and on ladies, right? And both for kids. The most important thing here is to master your neck measurement, and then don't forget to add extra tool to it and cut at exact of the measurement. So let's now iron and then come back to fixing aspects. Ironed, then I'm trimming off the excesses. I'm leaving half an inch, or 1/4 inch that we use to attach this outfit or the collar to the shirt, right? Please make sure you leave a certain inch for attaching this to the shirt. Very, very important as well, right? Please, very important. So trim all through and make sure you have a uniform allowance. Then after you have done this, now look at how it came out. This is how it is. So this part is what we use to attach it to the shirt. Please, very important as well, right? Very, very important. So now after doing this, now next you will do now is you fold into two, and then you notch the center point of your collar. Notch the center point of your collar, right? Now this notching must not exceed the gap you have left on your shirt. Then after you must have done this, now you pick up your shirt as well. You also fold the back piece of the shirt together. Fold the back piece of the shirt together, and then you also notch the midpoint of your shirt. That is the point you start fixing your collar from. So fold it together into two that way, and then you get the center point as well, and then you also notch from the back, right? Then after notching, then you must make sure that the gum part is inside the shirt. The gum part will be inside, meaning you place the one ungummed outside that way. So from there you hold it that way. So alternatively, you can still make a little stitch at the beginning of the button allowance with the collar, just to you can use pin to do this actually, right? So you can still stitch or pin. Now the reason to do this is to make sure that the collar doesn't spill over, or the shirt doesn't spill over on the collar as well. So once you stitch, just stitch a bit, then you can now stretch it out to make sure you get a perfect fixing from the one end to one end. But one of the easiest ways you can do this as well is by fixing from the center joining of the back all through to the button allowance, and then back again from the center back to the joining allowance as well. So now once you do this as well, you start cross checking your neck, and then you start from the center folding, the place you notched, open up the collar, start from there, and make sure that the inch you are going to sew from must be the inch you have left, or you have trimmed off and left the 1/4 inch. That 1/4 inch must be the part you must sew out from. Don't sew more than 1 inch, or sorry, half inch or 1/4 inch. Neither will you sew less than that. So make sure that the sewing comes from the exact point or measurement you have left. So start from the center notching, and then while sewing, try to stretch the collar a bit so that it will be balancing with the shirt itself. And then make sure that at this point you don't have to make any mistakes, because any mistake you do now will ruin the whole collar stage. So you just have to take your time to do this as well. So you stitch properly, right? As you can see, you stitch properly. So after doing this, now you can now start doing from the next part, which is say from the center fold, center back of the collar to the other edge of the collar as well. So this is how it's been done, and then I pray this video will help you to guide you on how to go about this whole collar issues fixing and how best you can achieve it. So now after this collar aspect, now next you will do now is to top stitch, because you are just trying to join it first. So you will not top stitch from the one that has the gum, which will not be inwards. Now the reason it should be inwards is because by the time you fling it out, the gum part will now appear at the back, as it will not come out outside, right? So that's the easiest way you can go about it. So you now stitch your collar from this point as well. Alright guys, so you take your time to arrange properly to make sure that everything is properly taken care of, right? So that you will not have any spillovers on your collar fixing and material fixing as well. So that's for the collar fixing, and then we're almost done with it. I will show you as well the results as we progress. So now we are done with the collar fixing, and this is the end points of it. So we have gotten to the center fold, and then I'm also trying to cross a bit so that it will lap properly. Then you bring that out this way. This is how it will be. Then cut your threads as well, and then when the threads are properly cut, and then the next thing you will do now is to open it up, and then you go about your regular top stitching of your collar, right? So this is how it's done. Stitching the collar, right? So this is how you go about it. After you must have held the first part, then you top stitch from the inside. Don't forget, you top stitch from the inside, right? Inside this way. Now while trying to top stitch, make sure you don't over insert the shirt in under. Make sure your insertion must be half an inch inside. Please don't insert more than half an inch inside. It must be half an inch inside, right? Then you top stitch. Then you start from the folding of the button allowance, and then you top stitch. Now as you're top stitching, you make sure that the material is covering the first sewing, and then that's the only thing you need to consider here. So don't insert the whole shirt inside the collar, please, very important as well. Then you top stitch. So now with the help of this video, I believe all of us can now boldly cut our shirt and sew, and then make your own presentations in the group, and then come up with questions. I believe the video is self-explanatory enough that I will have to entertain few or less or no questions at all. That's the essence of taking my time to make the video, right? So that all of us will be clarified and have more knowledge on shirt making. So we are done with the top stitching now. So you make sure you bring out any threads and cut it off, and then you end it properly. At that end, you see how it's corresponding, it's flushing very well. Don't allow your collar to spill over at that end. So after this now, you can now cut off your threads, and then you can now iron if you want to iron, and then you proceed to the regular sewing. And don't forget, this is Mr. Redefined, and then you proceed to your collar, your shirt aspect. So at this point, you now fold or bend the collar from the collar base, right? So you might have like half an inch extra or quarter inch extra. Then you fold in that form, and then fold all through, and then you iron out so that it will lap properly. This is why ironing, don't use a very hot iron to iron now, because you might end up spoiling the collar or burning the collar. So take your time to do this as well. So after you must have done this now, the next thing you will do now is you cross check the neck if it's going to lap properly. This is how the lapping effect is. So as you can see, this is how the neck is coming out, and they're giving us a nice result even without having to iron the neck collar or the collar as well. So now guys, we are going to try out the cuff link and then show you as well how to go about it. For the cuff, the part that has the collar gum, you have to sew it straight line. It's also called a decorative stitch. So you sewed half an inch or quarter inch that way, sew it all through from the beginning to the end. You are going to sew one piece of it, that's the two that has the collar gum, right? So you sew it that way, and then cut off your threads, and then this is going to give us another view of how to fix a curve, and then as well it's also very unique and very easy to follow if only you can pay attention to it and then grab the whole details you need. Then after you must have done that, now you now bring one piece of it, the one that was not gummed, then place it on top that way, as you can see how it's being placed. Then you start from the end of the collar gum, that's the whitish material, the interfacing, right? Then you sew from the end that way, then sew from whatever curve you made there, be it a slanted form or a curvy form, however you want to do it is solely acceptable. Then you might not really sew at the tip to tip, you might give it a little gap and sew. Now that little gap will help you, give you room to turn it over without having rumples or whatsoever issues at the curve, right? So you sew all through to that point. Then when you get to that stage, now you have ended the curve sewing, and then you bring it out and trim off the excesses from the edge. Trim it off this way so that it will be very easy for you to turn over as well. Then you trim it off that way as well, and then trim the up part as well, and then you also trim the sides as well. So this is how your trimming should be, right? And then this is just it. Then you fling it out this way, and then use your scissors to tuck out the edges. Don't make sure you don't you don't apply much pressure, because you might end up spilling the edge that way. So you just have to take it easy and bring it out, and then you iron it flat this way. And then I'm going to repeat the same process on the next curve, so that after this I will now go and iron properly, and then I now trim off the excesses before I start fixing on the sleeve of my shirt. So I hope this will help us to achieve this and do more of that as well.
This is my mother.
So now we are trying to cut the excess of the curve. Now, like I said, you have to trim it out this way, and then after you have ironed, this is how it is. So you cut it out this way. This part will be used to attach to the sleeve as well. So do the same thing on the other one. Cut it out in that form so that you will have 1/4 inch or thereabouts you will use to attach to the sleeve. That's just all I'm trying to explain in this video. So now you pick up one sleeve, you start to fix it on the curve on the sleeve. Now we are trying to fix the curve. So you start from the smaller part of the sleeve, and then start from that side to place your excesses, your curve. Now you are going to sew from this edge. Bear in mind you're sewing from inside, it will not come outside. Now sew from this part, then you sew from here. Now this curve was placed inside the sleeve, right? Inside the sleeve. Then you're going to retain that same 1/4 inch you gave to fix the curve to the sleeve. This is the inch you must use to do that. Then on approaching to the end of it, you have to stretch out the sleeve to the end of the curve. Now you now check the excesses, and now you now do the pleating as shown. Now this method is actually easy, it's not hard. Then you pleat the sleeve. Now this pleating should face the end of the placket. So now you make sure that the pleating is facing the end of the placket, right? So you fold it that way, and then you sew. Then once you sew, you make sure you get to the end of the placket. Make sure that the placket and the curve are corresponding. None should spill over. Then you stitch properly, right? And then you bring it out that way, and then you are going to cut your threads as well. Then once your threads are being cut, all you need to do now is you tuck it in as shown. You tuck it inside. Now this tucking in must be done so that you can top stitch, right? This is how it's being tucked in. Then once you have tucked it in, you can now top stitch on the curve, right? So this is how you can go about it as well. So guys, with the help of this video now, we can now cut our shirt, cut our collar, do the top stitching, fix the placket, fix the cuff and plackets, and then the next video you will see will be on buttonhole making and how to fix the buttons with your machine as well. So guys, I hope this video will go a long way to answer some pending questions on shirt making and all the whole protocols you might encounter. So now we are top stitching the cuff. So this is how you're gonna do it, and make sure that the top stitching is at the right point, right? So take your time to insert it inside. Now make sure that the top stitching is covering the old line you have sewn, so that it will give you a nice finishing. So this is how you're gonna do it, and then I hope this video must have solved a whole lot of pertinent questions on how to go about it. So now you cut your threads as well, and then once the threads are cut, then this is the cuff. This is how it looks like, right? And then you cut your threads in that form. Then you top stitch the cuff. You top stitch the cuff, right? 1/4 inch, or better still, use your industrial machine footer to gauge the sewing. Don't forget that the straight lines are determined by the lapping effect of the cuff at the edge of the foot. The needle is on a straight line point. Anything that you push to the needle, it gives you a straight line sewing. When you have a wrong sewing is when your feeding of the machine is wrong. You know, the process of pushing the machine, the fabric to the machine, is called feeding, right? So that's how you go about it. So now you cut your threads as well, and then we are done with the cuff. So I might as well just leave us to see the next stage, so that we can as well clarify. So as you can see, this is how our shirt plackets and cuff is, and this is how it's lapping properly. Now buttonholes will be made accordingly, and the buttons will be fixed as well. Then this is the next sleeve, and this is how it's as well fixed. So I pray this video will help us to understand how to make our shirts, and then solve the questions we must have been asking. Now you can as well make use of the previous method of cutting I have shown on the group to cut a shirt, and as well use this method to sew. The method of sewing doesn't really mean, right? What matters mostly is the end result. So you top stitch as well. So this is just how you're gonna do it. Take your time to arrange the cuff, and then before you start top stitching. And so now we have finished putting our collar, and then it's time for us to iron properly, right? So as you can see how neatly our shirt is looking. Please, yours should be better than this, because I'm actually explaining and sewing at the same time, which will give me more task. But you that is just watching to sew, you have all the room to do your corrections and sewings. So this is how the collar is, right? So all of us can now boldly say we can make our shirt with a collar. So then I'm trying to iron. In this ironing, if you notice, this edge is a bit wider here, is proper that way, and then coming to this part is almost giving us the similar width, but then coming at the end of the collar as well, the same thing applied here. So take note of this, and then you iron properly as well. So iron out the cuff, the sleeve that way. You can see how the sleeve came out, right? You iron out this way, you fold these corresponding parts on top. You see the correspondence you are having, right? So this is how yours should be. So look at the fancy nature of the cuff, so you iron as well. Look at how it's coming out. So you just use your cooler to cool it off after you have ironed, right? So this is how it is. You see how fine and nice everything is coming out. So please, I would like to see all of us replicate this and give me a better result than this, right? All right guys, this is the next one, right? This is how it came out. So I hope you are enjoying the view. So now we are done with the cuff and the collar. The next video we see will be on the buttonholes and button fixing. Don't forget, this is Mr. Redefined.